Taiyang stood at the observation window and watched his world die. The sun that had warmed Valeron Prime for billions of years was now swelling into a massive red giant. The planet's surface was already cracking apart from the heat. Rivers had turned to steam weeks ago. The forests were nothing but ash. "We have to go now," Yuna said behind him. Her voice was steady, but Taiyang could hear the fear underneath. She was his oldest friend. They had grown up together in the green valleys that no longer existed. Taiyang turned away from the window. The loading bay was chaos. Thousands of people were pressing forward, trying to get onto the ships. Children cried. Parents shouted names. The elderly struggled to keep up with the crowd. "How many can we take?" he asked. 2.3 million across all 17 ships, Yuna replied. She checked her datapad. "We had to leave 12 million behind. There wasn't enough time to build more ships. There weren't enough resources." Taiyang felt sick. He had never wanted to be a leader. He was a farmer, a scientist who studied soil and crops. But when the crisis came, people had looked to him. They needed someone to make the impossible decisions. "The final boarding ends in 1 hour," Dongyun called out. The young engineer was running between ships, checking systems, making sure everything would hold together for the journey. "We're already past safe capacity on ships 4, 7, and 11. "Pack them in," Taiyang ordered. "Save everyone we can." Dongyun nodded and ran off. Taiyang watched him go, so young, barely 20 years old, and carrying the weight of keeping these dying ships running. Hana approached with her communication team. She looked exhausted. The diplomat had been sending messages to every known civilization in the galaxy for months. "I've updated our plea to the Galactic Coalition. I sent it to all 247 member species. Surely someone will respond with help." "Did you tell them what we can offer?" Taiyang asked. "Everything. Our agricultural technology, our medical knowledge, our research into peaceful energy systems." Hana's hands shook slightly as she held her pad. "I explained we're not warriors. We have no weapons. We've never fought a war in our entire history. We just need a place to live." The Valente people had evolved from herd animals. Violence was not in their nature. They had built a civilization based on cooperation and harmony. Their greatest achievement was creating a world where no one went hungry, where sickness was rare, where people lived in peace. Now that world was ending. The ship's alarm blared. "Final boarding call. All passengers must board immediately. Launch sequence begins in 30 minutes. Taiyang made his way to the bridge of the lead colony ship. The vessel was called the New Dawn, though Taiyang wondered if they would ever see a new dawn. Through the viewport, he could see the other 16 ships. They were old, patched together from whatever materials could be gathered. The Valente had never built warships or military fleets. These colony ships were converted cargo haulers and passenger liners. "All ships report ready," the navigator said. "Course is set for the nearest coalition space. 3 months at maximum speed." "What's our supply situation?" Taiyang asked. The supply officer looked grim. "Food for 3 months on strict rationing. Water for 4 months if recycling holds. Medical supplies for 2 months. We built these ships for evacuation, not long-term survival." Yuna stepped up beside Taiyang. "We'll make it work. We have to." The countdown began. Taiyang gripped the railing and watched his world for the last time. Cities were crumbling. The oceans were boiling away. The mountains were melting into lava. 10 seconds, the navigator called out. Taiyang thought of everyone they were leaving behind, the millions who hadn't made it onto the ships. His sister had been among them. She had pushed him toward the ships and stayed behind so someone else could take her place. 5 seconds. All across the fleet, families huddled together. Parents held children close. The elderly sat quietly, lost in memories of a world that would soon be gone. Launch! The ships lifted off. The engines roared. Taiyang felt the acceleration push him back. Through the viewport, Valeron Prime grew smaller. The red sun expanded further, and then, in a bright flash, the planet broke apart completely. There was silence on the bridge. Someone was crying. Taiyang realized it was him. "We're all that's left," Yuna whispered. 2.3 million survivors of a civilization that numbered 14 billion. For 3 days, the fleet traveled in silence. People were too shocked to speak. They wandered the corridors like ghosts. The ship's common areas stayed empty. Meals were eaten alone. On the 4th day, Hana rushed to the bridge. "We got responses from the coalition." Taiyang felt hope bloom in his chest. "They'll help us?" Hana's face fell. "The Kethran Empire says no. They claim accepting refugees would be an economic burden. They say our culture is incompatible with theirs." "What about the others?" "The Praxian Collective also refused. They say our agricultural technology would destabilize their food markets. They're afraid we'd compete with their farmers." Taiyang stared at her. "We're dying. We have children starving on these ships. And they're worried about market competition?" More rejections came over the following weeks. The hegemony of Seven Suns said the Valente lacked defensive capabilities and would be a military liability. The Merchant Guild worlds didn't even respond to the messages. Dongyun reported that the ships were breaking down faster than expected. "We're running the engines too hard. The recycling systems are failing on ships 2 and 9. I'm doing everything I can, but we weren't meant to travel this long." Yuna's medical reports grew darker each day. "We've lost 200 people to malnutrition, mostly elderly and very young. The medical bays are overwhelmed. We're running out of basic medicines." Taiyang met with Minho, a young father whose daughter was sick. The little girl was only 5 years old. She lay in a medical bed, too weak to move. "Please," Minho begged. "Tell me someone will help us. Tell me there's hope." Taiyang had no answer. He held the man's hand and stayed silent. On the 93rd day of their journey, long past their supplies' intended duration, a message came from an unexpected source, a remote monitoring station not affiliated with any major coalition power. Hana brought it to Taiyang. "It's short, but it's something." Taiyang read the message. "Try the humans. Sector 47B. They're new to the coalition, only 20 years. We don't understand them. They're emotional, unpredictable, illogical by our standards, but they might help. They're different from the rest of us." "Humans," Taiyang repeated. "I've never heard of them." "They're considered a backwater species," Hana said. "Not very advanced compared to the major powers. Their planet is called Earth." Taiyang looked at his exhausted crew, at the dying ships, at the desperate people who had lost everything. They had been rejected by everyone. Every powerful civilization had turned them away. Maybe someone weak and different would understand what it meant to have nothing. "Set course for Earth," Taiyang ordered. "It's our last chance." The fleet turned toward Sector 47B, toward a small blue planet they had never heard of, toward the only hope they had left. The journey to Earth took another month. Every day was harder than the last. The colony ships were falling apart. Dongyun barely slept anymore. He spent every waking hour crawling through maintenance tunnels, patching holes, rerouting power, begging the old systems to hold together just a little longer. "Ship 14's main engine is dead," he reported to Taiyang. His hands were covered in burns and cuts. "We're towing it with Ship 13, but that's putting double strain on 13's engine. I don't know how long it will last." Taiyang nodded tiredly. "Do what you can." In the medical bay, Yuna moved between patients like a ghost. There were too many sick people and not enough supplies. She had started making impossible choices about who would get the remaining medicine and who wouldn't. "We lost 37 people yesterday," she told Taiyang during one of their evening meetings. "Starvation, disease, and despair. Some of the elderly are choosing to die so children can have their food rations." "We can't let that happen," Taeyang said. How do we stop it? We have no food, no medicine, no hope. Yuna's voice cracked. These people trusted us to save them. We're watching them die slowly. Minho's daughter was getting worse. The little girl could barely open her eyes now. Minho sat by her bed constantly, holding her small hand. "Tell me a story, Papa," she whispered. Minho told her about the green valleys of Valeron Prime, about the rainbow trees that grew by their old house, about the festivals where everyone danced under 3 moons. But his voice shook, and tears ran down his face. Dongyun would visit when he could. He and Minho had become close friends during the journey. They would sit together in silence, sharing what little food they had. "I'm sorry I can't fix this," Dongyun said one night. "You keep us alive," Minho replied. "That's more than anyone else can do." Hana spent her days monitoring communication channels. She listened to coalition news broadcasts and heard how they talked about the Valente fleet. "They're calling us the ghost ships," she told Taeyang. "The other species watch us drift through space and do nothing. Some of them have taken bets on how long we'll survive." "They see us as entertainment?" Taeyang felt anger rise in him, something rare for the peaceful Valente. "Worse, they see us as a lesson. They're using us as an example of what happens to species that don't develop military strength. They say we deserve this for being too weak." The Galactic News showed commentators discussing the Valente situation. One Catherine analyst said, "This is nature's way. The weak perish, the strong survive. The Valente chose peace over power. Now they pay the price." A Praxian economist added, "Any species that accepts these refugees will regret it. They bring nothing of value. They'll drain resources and contribute nothing." Taeyang watched these broadcasts and felt something break inside him. His people had built a beautiful civilization. They had solved hunger and disease. They had created art and music and philosophy that celebrated life. And the galaxy saw them as worthless because they had no weapons. On day 123, the fleet entered the solar system marked as Sector 47b, a yellow sun. 8 planets. The 3rd planet from the sun was blue and green and white. Earth. "It's beautiful," Yuna breathed, staring at the viewport. "It looks like home," Minho said softly, "before the sun died." But Taeyang felt fear. What if the humans rejected them too? What if this last hope was just another dead end? "We're being hailed," the communications officer announced. "Multiple ships approaching, military vessels." Taeyang's heart sank. Military ships usually meant one thing. They were being told to leave. "This is Captain Jinwoo of the Earth Defense Fleet vessel Indomitable," a voice came through the speakers. The translation software rendered it in Valente language. "Valente ships, we've received your distress signal. Please stand by for emergency assistance." Emergency assistance? Not a rejection? Taeyang didn't dare hope. "This is Taeyang of the colony ship New Dawn. We request asylum for 2.3 million refugees. We have children dying. Our ships are failing. We can offer technological knowledge in exchange for—" "Stop," Jinwoo interrupted. "You don't need to bargain. We're sending medical teams now. Food supplies are being loaded. Engineering crews are ready to begin repairs. Prepare for docking procedures." Taeyang stared at the communication panel. "You're helping us? Just like that?" There was a pause. Then Jinwoo's voice came back, and it sounded confused. "Why wouldn't we help? You're in trouble." Within hours, human ships swarmed around the Valente fleet. They were smaller than coalition military vessels, less advanced looking, but they moved with purpose and speed. Yuna watched in shock as human medical teams boarded her ship. They came in wearing white uniforms with red crosses. They brought cases of supplies, portable medical equipment, food, water. "We're doctors from Earth's Emergency Response Corps," one of them said. She was young, with dark hair pulled back. "Show us you're sick. We'll start treatment immediately. But Don't you need to assess the situation first? Calculate costs? Determine if we're worth saving? Yuna asked. The human doctor looked at her strangely. People are dying. That's the only assessment we need. The medical teams spread through the ship. Yuna followed them and watched something she had never seen before. The humans treated each patient like they mattered. They worked with intensity and emotion. When they saved someone, they smiled and celebrated. When they lost someone, they looked genuinely sad. One doctor cried when an elderly Valente man died despite their efforts. Yuna found this shocking. Why are you crying? You didn't know him. You just met him. The doctor wiped her eyes. He was a person. He mattered. That's enough reason to cry. On the engineering deck, Dongyun met the human repair crews. They came aboard with tools and materials and cheerful attitudes that seemed bizarre given the circumstances. Let's see what we're working with, one engineer said. His name was Chen, and he grinned as he looked at the failing systems. Oh, this is bad, this is really bad. But we can fix it, we love a good challenge. Dongyun showed them the critical failures. I've been holding this together with spare parts and hope. The main reactor is at 30%. The recycling system fails every 6 hours. The hull has microfractures throughout. Right, Chen said. We'll start with the reactor. My team brought a portable fusion core. We'll install it as a backup system. Should buy you enough power to reach Earth safely. You're giving us a fusion core? Dongyun asked. Those are expensive. Chen shrugged. People are more important than equipment. On the bridge, Tai Yang was in a meeting with a human woman who introduced herself as Sora, the UN ambassador for refugee affairs. We're preparing landing sites on Earth now, Sora explained. She showed him images on a screen. Wide open spaces, grasslands and plains. We've identified several locations that match your environmental needs. Mongolia, Canada, Australia. We can accommodate all 2.3 million of you. But your people haven't even voted on this, Taeyang said. Don't you need approval from your government? Economic studies? Impact assessments? Our government authorized emergency measures 6 hours ago, Sora replied. Every nation on Earth has pledged support. We're mobilizing resources from across the planet. Why? Taeyang asked the question that had haunted him. Everyone else rejected us. The powerful civilizations of the galaxy want nothing to do with us. Why would you help? Sora was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Because you need help. Because it's right. Because we'd want someone to do the same for us. She looked at him directly. And because the galaxy's idea of strength is broken. They think weapons make you strong. We think compassion does. Over the next few days, the transformation was incredible. The human teams worked without stopping. They brought food, medicine, equipment, supplies. They repaired the ships. They treated the sick. Minho's daughter received treatment from a human pediatrician. Within 2 days, she was sitting up. Within a week, she was laughing and playing again. Minho found Dongyun and hugged him, crying with joy. She's going to live. My daughter is going to live. The colony ships began their final approach to Earth. Taeyang stood at the viewport and watched the blue planet grow larger. Behind him, his people were no longer silent and despairing. They were talking, laughing, hoping. I don't understand them, Hana said, standing beside him. The humans. They gain nothing from this. They're spending enormous resources. Their economy will suffer. Other coalition species are already criticizing them, but they don't care. Taeyang smiled for the first time in months. Maybe that's exactly why they're different. Maybe that's what makes them special. The ships entered Earth's atmosphere guided by human pilots. Through the viewports, Taeyang saw land prepared for them. Structures already being built. Humans waiting on the ground, ready to welcome them. Abandoned by everyone, the Valente had found the one species willing to help. The last hope had become their salvation. The first Valenti ship touched down in the grasslands of Mongolia. Taiyang walked down the landing ramp and felt real ground under his feet for the first time in 5 months. The air was fresh and cool. The sky was blue. He fell to his knees and wept. All around him, Valente refugees were doing the same. They kissed the ground. They held their children up to feel the wind. They laughed and cried at the same time. Hundreds of humans waited to greet them. They had set up temporary shelters, medical stations, food distribution centers. Volunteers held signs in Valente language saying, "Welcome home," and "You're safe now." A human child ran up to Taiyang and handed him a flower. "We picked these for you," she said shyly. Behind her, more children came forward with flowers, gifts, drawings they had made. Taiyang took the flower with shaking hands. "Thank you," he whispered. Over the next few weeks, all 17 ships landed at different sites across Earth. Yuna's group landed in Canada. Dongyun and Minho's families went to Australia. Hana landed with a group in South Africa. The humans had built temporary housing at each site. They were simple structures, but clean and safe. Each family got their own space. Food came 3 times a day. Medical care was available around the clock. Taiyang established the main settlement in Mongolia. He named it New Valeron. Within days, it became home to 300,000 Valente refugees. The humans had prepared everything: water systems, power generators, communication networks. But what amazed Taiyang most was the human interest in Valente culture. Teachers came to learn the Valente language. Historians asked about their civilization. Artists wanted to understand Valente music and art. "We want to know you," one human professor explained. "Your people have 10,000 years of history. That's precious. We want to learn from you." Human children started attending classes taught by Valente teachers. They learned about Valente philosophy of harmony and balance. They studied Valente agricultural methods. They were fascinated by everything. In the medical centers, Yuna worked alongside human doctors. She taught them about Valente medical techniques. They taught her about human medicine. Together, they found new ways to treat patients. "You care so much," Yuna said to one doctor. "I've never seen medical professionals this emotional about their work." The doctor smiled. "Medicine is about people, not just science. If you don't care about the person, you're just fixing a machine." Dongyun collaborated with human engineers on various projects. He was amazed by their approach to problem solving. When Valente engineers would carefully calculate and plan, humans would experiment and try new things. "You're so willing to fail," Dongyun observed. "That's how we learn," his human colleague replied. "Every failure teaches us something." Together, they started working on fusion power improvements. Dongyun's theoretical knowledge combined with human experimental methods. They made breakthroughs that surprised even them. Minho's daughter was completely healthy now. She played with human children in the settlement. They didn't share a language yet, but they played games together, laughed together, became friends without words. Minho watched them and felt peace for the first time since leaving Valeron Prime. "She has a future now," he told Dongyun, "because of Earth." But not everything was easy. Earth's economy struggled under the refugee support costs. Food prices rose across the planet. Some human communities protested, saying resources should go to humans first. Political tensions emerged. Some Earth governments argued about the burden. News broadcasts showed debates about whether helping the Valente was wise. Taiyang watched these broadcasts with worry. "Maybe we're causing too many problems. Maybe we should leave, find somewhere else." But Sora came to visit New Valoran and sat with him. "Every society has disagreements. That's normal. But the majority of humans support you being here. We chose this. We knew it would be hard." "Why choose something hard?" Taeyang asked. "Why suffer for strangers?" "Because you're not strangers anymore. You're our neighbors now. And because doing the right thing is often hard, that doesn't make it less right." The coalition species watched Earth's struggle with a mix of amusement and disdain. Galactic news broadcasts showed the economic problems, the political debates, the social tensions. The humans are collapsing under the weight of their irrational compassion, one commentator said. This is why emotional species fail. They let feelings override logic. Hana monitored these broadcasts and grew angry. They mock Earth for helping us. They celebrate human suffering. I hate them. But then something unexpected started happening. The Valente's agricultural technology, which they shared freely with their human hosts, began transforming Earth's farming. Valente crop enhancement methods increased yields by 300%. Drought-resistant strains allowed farming in previously barren areas. Soil restoration techniques revived dead land. Within 6 months, Earth's food production had tripled. Regions that had been starving were now fed. The economic crisis began to ease. Food prices dropped below what they had been before the Valente arrived. Hyun Woo, the human architect who had led the settlement construction, worked with Valente designers to create hybrid buildings. They combined human construction speed with Valente aesthetic harmony. The settlements became beautiful places that honored both cultures. Your architecture is based on natural patterns, Hyunwoo said, studying Valente designs. This is brilliant. We've been building squares and rectangles for centuries. You build in spirals and curves that match how nature grows. Together, they designed New Valeron's Central Plaza. It was a stunning space where Valente curves met human engineering. Gardens grew in spiral patterns. Buildings flowed like water. It became famous across Earth. The Valente medical advances began saving human lives, too. Diseases that had plagued humanity for generations were cured using Valente treatments. Cancer rates dropped. Genetic disorders were fixed. Human life expectancy increased by 15 years. Yuna found herself teaching at a major human medical school. You saved us, she told her students. Now let us save you in return. A year after the landing, Taeyang walked through New Valoran's marketplace. Valente and humans worked side by side. Shops sold food from both worlds. Children of both species played together in the streets. Mixed language signs decorated every building. He met with Sora, who had become a close friend. They sat in a cafe that served both human coffee and Valente herbal tea. Your people are thriving, Sora observed. Birth rates are up. Health is improving. New Valoran is becoming a real city. Because of you, Taeyang said. Because Earth gave us a chance when no one else would. You've given us so much in return, Sora replied. Your agricultural technology alone has saved millions of human lives. Your medical advances are revolutionary. Your philosophy is changing how we think about community. We didn't help you expecting anything back, Taeyang said. Sora smiled. I know. That's what makes it so valuable. You shared because it was right, not because you wanted something. That evening, a joint Valente human festival was held in the Central Plaza. Musicians from both species played together. Dancers moved to rhythms that blended two cultures. Food stalls offered dishes that mixed ingredients from Earth and the lost Valoran Prime. Minho's daughter danced with human friends. Donghyun demonstrated his fusion power breakthrough to amazed crowds. Yuna gave a speech about unity and hope. Hyunwoo unveiled plans for expanding the settlements. Taeyang stood on a platform and looked out at the crowd. Thousands of beings, 2 species, 1 community. A year ago, we had nothing, he said. We were dying in space, rejected by everyone, no hope, no future. The crowd grew quiet, listening. Earth welcomed us when no one else would. Humans gave us everything, safety, food, medicine, home. He paused, emotion thick in his voice. But they gave us something more important than any of that. They gave us dignity. They treated us like we mattered. Applause erupted. Humans and Valente cheered together. The galaxy says humans are weak because they feel too much, because they care too much, Because they act on emotion instead of logic. Taeyang smiled. The galaxy is wrong. Caring isn't weakness. Compassion isn't failure. Earth proved that. Later that night, Hana showed Taeyang something on her communication device. It was a message from a species he'd never heard of. They're refugees too, Hana explained. Their world is dying. The coalition rejected them, just like they rejected us. But they heard about Earth. They're asking if they can come here too. Taeyang looked at the message for a long time. Then he looked at Sora, who was reading over his shoulder. What do you think? He asked her. Sora smiled. I think we should ask our friends if they want to welcome more neighbors. Earth has more room, and we've gotten pretty good at this. Taeyang thought about the galaxy that had abandoned them, the cold, logical civilizations that valued power over people. And then he thought about Earth, the strange little planet that chose compassion over calculation. The galaxy had rejected the Valente for being too weak, but Earth had embraced them for being exactly what they were. And in doing so, Earth was changing what strength meant. 2 years after the Valente arrived, New Valeron had grown into a thriving city. Buildings rose in elegant spirals that matched the grassland horizon. Gardens bloomed with plants from 2 worlds. Streets buzzed with mixed crowds, speaking a blend of languages. Taeyang had never imagined this kind of future. He walked through the city market and saw Valente farmers selling enhanced crops to human buyers. Human artists displayed work inspired by Valente philosophy. Children of both species attended the same schools, learning each other's history. But beyond Earth, the galaxy watched with growing concern. The other coalition species had expected Earth to collapse under the refugee burden. Instead, Earth was thriving. Human worlds were more prosperous than before. Their technology was advancing rapidly through Valente collaboration. This made the coalition nervous. We need to discuss the human problem, the Kethrin ambassador said during a coalition assembly meeting. Hana watched the broadcast from her office on Earth. They're becoming too influential, too powerful. Their refugee policy is spreading dangerous ideas. Dangerous ideas like helping people? Hana muttered to her screen. The Praxian representative agreed with the Kethran. Other species are starting to question our policies. They're asking why we don't have refugee protections like Earth does. This is destabilizing our political systems. The coalition voted to impose economic sanctions on Earth. They cut trade agreements. They blocked human ships from certain space routes. They made it clear that Earth's compassion would be punished. Jinwoo, now promoted to Admiral of Earth's unified fleet, held a press conference about the sanctions. Taeyang and Sora attended. The coalition wants us to stop helping refugees, Jinwoo explained to the gathered reporters. They claim we're being irrational and destabilizing. They want us to act more like them. Will Earth comply? A reporter asked. Jinwoo smiled. Absolutely not. We're humans. We don't abandon people who need help just because it's inconvenient. The sanctions hurt Earth's economy. Some luxury goods became unavailable. Space travel became more expensive. Trade revenues dropped. Political opponents of the refugee policy pointed to these problems. We're suffering because of aliens, one human politician said during a heated debate. We should focus on humans first. Taeyang watched this debate with growing guilt. He called a meeting with other Valente leaders. Maybe we should leave, he said. Earth is being punished for helping us. We're causing them problems. Yuna shook her head firmly. Earth chose to help us. They knew the cost. We should honor that choice by making their world better, not by running away. How do we make it better? Dongyun asked. Minho spoke up. He had been working closely with human engineers for 2 years now. We keep doing what we're doing. We share everything we know. We work together. We prove that cooperation makes everyone stronger. The Valente human collaboration intensified. In the fusion power labs, Dong-Yun and his team completed their breakthrough project. They had combined Valente theoretical physics with human experimental methods to create a new type of reactor. It's 3 times more efficient than current coalition reactors, Dong-Yun explained to Taeyang. And it's completely clean. No waste. No radiation danger. This could change everything, Minho added. Energy is the foundation of civilization. If we can provide unlimited clean energy, Earth won't need coalition trade. The new reactors went into production. Within months, Earth's energy costs dropped to almost nothing. Industries that had been struggling became profitable again. The economic damage from coalition sanctions was reversed. In the medical field, Yuna led a joint research team that combined human and Valente knowledge. They developed treatments for diseases that affected both species. They made breakthrough discoveries about genetic engineering and cellular regeneration. We're learning more together than either species could learn alone, Yuna told her team. This is the power of diversity. Different perspectives lead to better solutions. Hyunwoo's architectural innovations spread across Earth. The hybrid Valente human designs became popular worldwide. They were beautiful, efficient, and environmentally harmonious. Cities were being rebuilt using these new principles. We're not just rebuilding cities, Hyunwoo said during an interview. We're rebuilding our relationship with nature. The Valente taught us that buildings should flow with the environment, not fight against it. But the greatest change was cultural. Human philosophy was being influenced by Valente ideas of harmony and community. Valente culture was being enriched by human creativity and passion. A new mixed culture was emerging. Taeyang attended the opening of the new Valoron Cultural Center. It was a stunning building that looked like it had grown from the Earth itself. Inside, exhibits showed the history of both species. Art from both worlds hung side by side. This is our shared heritage now, Sora said, standing beside him. Your past and our present, creating our future together. The center included a memorial wall for the Valente who had died during the Exodus and the humans who had died helping refugees. Names were carved in both languages. Flowers were laid daily. Minho brought his daughter to see the memorial. She was 7 now, healthy and happy. She read the names of Valente elders who had died on the ships. They died so I could live, she said quietly. And humans risked everything to save you, Minho replied. Remember both. Honor both. On the 2nd anniversary of the landing, a massive celebration was held across all Valente settlements. Millions of humans and Valente gathered together. But in the middle of the celebration, alarms started blaring. Emergency broadcasts lit up every screen. Critical galactic health emergency, the coalition announcement declared. A plague has emerged in the core worlds. Billions are infected. We call it the Crimson Death. Hana's face went pale as she read the details. This is the plague we studied on Valoran Prime. We never found a cure. It killed millions before our sun died. The coalition message continued. We are calling upon all member species to share medical knowledge. This is an emergency that affects us all. Within hours, another message came. This one was directed specifically at Earth. The Valente have research data on the Crimson Death. We demand they share this information immediately. This is a matter of galactic security. Taeyang read the message and felt anger rise in him. They demand? After rejecting us? After leaving us to die? After imposing sanctions on Earth for helping us? Now they demand our help? Yuna pulled up the research files. We do have data. Years of study. We never solved it completely, but we learned a lot. This information could save billions of lives. Should we give it to them? Dong-Yun asked. The question hung in the air. The coalition had abandoned the Valente. They had mocked Earth's compassion. They had punished humanity for being kind. They deserved nothing. But Taeyang thought about what Earth had taught them, about compassion without conditions. about helping because it was right, not because someone deserved it. He thought about the human doctor who cried when saving a Valenti stranger, about the volunteers who gave everything to refugees they'd never met, about Sora's simple words, because it's right. "We're not like them," Taeyang said finally. "We won't abandon people who need help, even if those people abandoned us first." Jinwoo was called to an emergency coalition assembly meeting. He arrived at the galactic capital with a human delegation. The chamber was filled with representatives from all 247 member species. They looked desperate. The plague was spreading faster than they could contain it. Billions were dying. Their advanced medical systems couldn't stop it. "Earth must share the Valente research," the Kethran ambassador demanded. "Immediately and without conditions." Jinwoo stood before them calmly. "Let me understand this correctly. You rejected the Valente when they were dying. You called them worthless. You imposed sanctions on Earth for helping them, and now you demand their knowledge?" "This is different," the Praxian representative argued. "This affects everyone. This is about galactic survival." "The Valenti exodus was about survival too," Jinwoo replied, "but you didn't care then." Silence filled the chamber. The coalition representatives looked uncomfortable. They weren't used to being challenged, especially by a species they considered inferior. Taeyang stepped forward. He had come to the assembly to speak for his people. "We will help you," he said simply. The coalition representatives looked relieved, but Taeyang wasn't finished. "But there are conditions." The coalition assembly chamber went completely silent. Representatives from 247 species stared at Taeyang. No one had expected conditions. The powerful civilizations of the galaxy were not used to negotiating with refugees. "What conditions?" the Kethran ambassador finally asked. His tone was angry, but fear lurked underneath. The Crimson Death was killing his people by the millions. Taeyang stood straight. 2 years ago, he had been a broken man begging for scraps. Now he spoke with quiet strength. The Earth Accords, universal refugee protections, mandatory aid requirements, an end to species-based discrimination. "Impossible," the Praxian representative said immediately. "That would reshape all coalition policy." "Then billions die," Jinwoo said simply. "Your choice." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded Earth comply without conditions. Others argued they should accept the terms. Still others suggested military action against Earth. Sora stood and waited for silence. When it didn't come, she simply spoke over the noise. "Let me be clear about Earth's position. We will help because helping is right. The Valente will share their research freely, but we will not participate in a galactic system that abandons the vulnerable." "You can't dictate terms to the entire coalition," a representative from the hegemony of Seven Suns protested. "We're not dictating," Sora replied calmly. "We're offering a choice. Continue your current system and solve the plague yourselves, or accept that compassion isn't weakness. Change your policies and let us help save your people." Hana stepped forward next. 2 years ago, I begged you to save my people. Every single one of you said no. You had logical reasons, economic concerns, political considerations, strategic calculations, and while you calculated, we died. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes with the representatives who had rejected the Valente. Earth didn't calculate. They didn't debate. They didn't consider the cost. They just helped. And you called them foolish for it. You imposed sanctions. You mocked their compassion. Hana's voice grew stronger. Now you need that same foolish compassion to save you. The irony isn't lost on us. The coalition representatives had no response. They had spent years claiming their cold logic was superior to human emotion. Now that logic had no answer to the Crimson Death, and only human compassion offered hope. "We need time to discuss this," the Kethran ambassador said stiffly. "You have 3 hours," Jinwoo replied. Then the human delegation returns to Earth with or without an agreement. The plague won't wait for your political games. The human delegation, along with Taeyang and Hana, withdrew to a private chamber. They watched news feeds showing the plague's spread. Hospitals overflowing, cities under quarantine, death counts rising exponentially. "We should just give them the research," Yuna said over the communication channel from Earth. "People are dying." "And if we do, nothing changes," Taeyang replied. "In 10 years, another species will face disaster. The coalition will abandon them just like they abandoned us. The cycle continues." "He's right," Sora agreed. "This isn't about revenge. It's about making sure this never happens again. The galaxy needs to learn that you can't just ignore suffering when it's convenient and demand help when it's you who's suffering." Minho's voice came through the channel. "My daughter is alive because Earth refused to calculate cost. They just helped. The galaxy needs to understand that. They need to become better." 3 hours passed. The coalition assembly reconvened. The Kethran ambassador approached the podium. He looked like he had aged years in those 3 hours. "The coalition has voted," he announced. "We accept Earth's terms. The Earth Accords will be implemented across all member worlds. Universal refugee protections, mandatory aid requirements, anti-discrimination laws." Jinwoo nodded. "Then we begin immediately." Within hours, Yuna was leading the medical response. She transmitted all Valente research to coalition medical teams. She organized joint human Valente medical crews to deploy across the galaxy. The response was massive and immediate. Dongyun's engineering teams helped set up emergency medical facilities on dozens of worlds. His fusion reactors powered hospitals that needed enormous energy. His efficiency innovations allowed treatment centers to help more people faster. Hyunwoo designed quarantine facilities that were humane and efficient. Instead of cold, prison-like structures, he created healing spaces that followed Valente human design principles. Patients recovered faster in environments that felt hopeful rather than desperate. The plague response took 6 months. It was hard, exhausting work. Human and Valente medical teams worked alongside coalition doctors. Lives were saved by the billions. The Crimson Death was contained, then eliminated. Throughout the crisis, something remarkable happened. Coalition species saw humans and Valente working side by side with their people. They saw the compassion, the dedication, the refusal to give up on anyone. They saw strength that didn't come from weapons or economic power. They saw strength that came from caring. A year after the plague, the coalition held a ceremony to officially implement the Earth Accords. Representatives from all member species attended. The humans and Valente were honored as heroes. But Taeyang felt uncomfortable with the praise. "We didn't do this to be heroes. We did it because it was right." The coalition appointed Hana as the first refugee commissioner. She would oversee the new refugee protections and make sure no species ever faced what the Valente had faced. "Will you take the position?" Taeyang asked her. Hana looked out at the galaxy that had once rejected her people. "Yes, but I'm keeping my home in New Valeron. Earth is my home now. I'll serve the galaxy, but I'll never forget where I truly belong." Back on Earth, life continued to blend human and Valente cultures. New Valeron had grown to a city of 500,000. Similar cities existed across Earth. Children grew up learning both cultures, speaking both languages, celebrating both histories. Minho's daughter was 9 now. She attended a school where human and Valente children learned together. She wanted to be a doctor like Yuna. She wanted to help people like Earth had helped her. "Why did Earth help us?" she asked her father one day. Minho thought about how to explain it. "Because they believe everyone matters. Not because of what you can give them. Not because you're strong or useful. Just because you exist. Because you're alive." "That's a good way to be," she said. "Yes," Minho agreed. "It's the best way to be." 3 years after the Valente landing, the first refugee ship from another species arrived at Earth. They were fleeing war in their home system. The coalition had processed their asylum request for months while people died. Earth's response was immediate. "Come to us. You're safe here." Taeyang watched the new refugees land. He remembered being in their position, desperate, afraid, abandoned by everyone. He greeted them personally. "Welcome to Earth. Welcome home." The galaxy had changed. The Earth Accords were working. Refugee populations were being protected. Aid was being distributed more fairly. Species were being judged by their character, not their military power. But Earth itself had changed too. The human world had been transformed by Valente culture. They had learned to value harmony alongside progress. They had learned to balance emotion with wisdom. They had become better versions of themselves. Jinwoo retired from the military and became Earth's ambassador to the coalition. His job was to keep pushing for compassion in galactic politics. It was an uphill battle, but he never gave up. "The galaxy's default is still cold logic," he said during an interview. "They calculate costs and benefits. They measure worth in economic terms. But we're slowly teaching them that there's a different way." Yuna and her medical teams had become legendary across the galaxy. They responded to emergencies everywhere. They treated everyone, regardless of species or ability to pay. They had started a movement. "Medicine isn't about profit," she told her students. "It's about people. Every life has value. Earth taught me that. Now we teach the galaxy." Dongyun's fusion technology had become the galactic standard. His reactors powered hundreds of worlds. His designs were used by every major civilization. The species that had rejected the Valente now relied on Valente knowledge every day. "It's funny," he said to Minho. "They called us worthless. Now they can't function without our contributions." "That's because they were wrong about what makes someone valuable," Minho replied. On the 5th anniversary of the landing, a massive celebration was held at New Valeron. Representatives from across the galaxy attended. The city had become a symbol of hope and cooperation. Taeyang gave a speech to the millions who attended, both in person and across galactic broadcasts. "5 years ago, my people were abandoned by everyone. We were dying in space. No one wanted us. No one cared. We were judged worthless because we had no weapons, no military power, nothing to trade but knowledge and kindness." He paused and looked out at the mixed crowd. Humans and Valente standing together. Other species who had learned from their example. "Only Earth welcomed us, a species the galaxy considered weak and irrational. They gave us everything. They asked for nothing in return. They suffered sanctions and mockery for their compassion. But they never wavered." The crowd was silent, listening. Earth taught the galaxy that strength isn't about weapons. It's about character. Compassion isn't weakness. It's the highest form of courage, and helping others isn't foolish. It's what makes civilization worthwhile. Applause erupted. It went on for minutes. That evening, Taeyang walked through New Valeron with Sora, Yuna, Jinwoo, Hana, Donghyun, and Minho. They passed gardens where plants from 3 worlds grew together, buildings that blended multiple architectural styles, children playing games that mixed different cultures. "We've built something beautiful here," Sora said. "We built it together," Taeyang replied. "That's what makes it beautiful." Above them, the stars shone bright. Ships moved between worlds, carrying refugees to safety, aid to those in need. Hope to the desperate. The galaxy was changing, slowly, reluctantly, but changing. And it all started because one small blue planet chose compassion over calculation, because humanity refused to abandon strangers in need, because Earth welcomed those whom everyone else rejected. Taeyang looked up at those stars and smiled. Somewhere out there, another species was struggling. Another group of refugees was searching for hope. They would find it. Because the galaxy had learned a new lesson. No one would be abandoned again. Earth had made sure of that. The Valente had lost their home world. But they had found something better. They had found a family. They had found allies who valued them not for what they could give, but for who they were. They had found Earth, and Earth had found them. Together, they were changing the galaxy, one act of kindness at a time.